Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a couple minutes. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Q4 Wisconsin Tableau user group event. As people are gathering, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. Make sure to switch over the two from panelists to everyone. Tell us where you're joining us from and tell us where you stand on candy corn. Personally, I'm a fan of the harvest corn with the chocolate layer, or else some candy corn with some salted peanuts mixed in. Brandy, how about you?
You know, we had this conversation already. I despise candy corn. Yeah, I don't think it should be described as candy. So,
You're in that team, huh?
yeah, a little bit. But I am interested in hearing from everybody else. So, yay or nay on the candy corn? It's really the most pressing question that you're going to get today.
Now that we're talking about it, we should have checked Tableau Public for, chat is disabled, Brandy.
Is it? Stand by. All right, I think I changed it. So can you try the chat again? Hey, thank you.
There we go. All right, Jen is a no to candy corn. So Tammy, are you saying chat is good now or candy corn or both?
So for those just joining, we are using the chat to kind of, say hello to everyone. Make sure that you're setting that chat to be sent to everyone. That means that everyone, panelists, hosts, and the audience members can all see that chat. But the question really is, where do you stand on candy corn? So introduce yourself, and then yeah, yay or nay on the candy corn is the question.
They were just talking about this on the radio, I think 2 days ago. Apparently, candy corn has been surpassed as the most hated candy at Halloween time by circus peanuts, which I would have to agree with as well. Those are equally awful.
I want to know who comes up with these candy
Circus
ideas.
Peanuts has a certain place in heck for candy, so candy corn will never surpass it.
Oh my God, there's people out there who
Just the
love
texture,
candy
it's
corn?
awful.
Yeah,
I mean, somebody must love them that they keep making them.
well, for sure.
Right.
And
The
it's
owners.
Maya loves candy corn. I mean, Bo also is pro candy corn.
Keith
So
likes candy corn. No, Crystal, no. It's a very divisive topic.
it is. It is. This is a good one. This is a good one.
Candy
Oh my
corn
God.
can work with salted peanuts, but the what you call it, circus peanuts cannot work with salted peanuts. No way.
I can't think of the last time I had circus peanuts.
The texture is the worst thing.
Circus peanuts are almost as good as packing peanuts.
Almost.
That's pretty funny, Rob. My
Luke.
great grandmother loved that. I think it's called sea foam. It's this slightly burnt tasting butterscotchy sort of candy with it's really weird styrofoamy texture coated in cheap chocolate. I can't understand why she liked it. Am I
Sounds
the only person who
appetizing.
knows about that though? Chocolate sea foam.
Never heard of it, and it sounds really appetizing.
Yeah.
I
My
made it sound
mother-in-law
so
likes
good.
Good sales job there, Jen.
Yeah. I was just going to put Luke on the spot. He joined us just a little bit ago. Luke, curious, how do you feel about candy corn or circus peanuts?
I'm not a candy guy to begin with, but circus peanuts, in my opinion, have no place on this earth. Candy corn, I think, can work in certain situations.
Good.
I'm quite sure that the circus peanuts are flammable too.
Okay, there was a trivia question. What flavor are circus peanuts? And Wendy guessed banana. Now Wendy's really good at trivia, so I'm curious. Does anybody know the answer?
Vomit.
I thought it was peanut. No? I guess I haven't had one in ages.
Banana. Banana's right. Good job, Wendy.
Good confirmation.
Yeah. But yes,
Awesome.
Jen, one would think, right? Peanut.
Yeah.
Banana never deserved that. So.
True.
All right.
Well, whether you're a circus peanut lover or a candy corn lover, you're welcome in this Wisconsin Tug event. And let's go ahead and kick things off. My name's Patrick McCormick, and I'm joined by my host, Brandy Beals, along with a star-studded panelist of speakers today, all of which have ties to Wisconsin. And let's take a look at our agenda. So we'll kick things off here. We'll do a little audience profile, get to know each other a little bit better. And then we'll introduce our speaker on Dreamforce and One Community, Adam Mico. And then we'll do our round of panelists on covering different aspects of calculations. And then we'll finally wrap it up with a giveaway. And so the giveaway is based on your participation today. So jump in. This is a webinar, so we'll be using the Q&A feature. So put your questions in the Q&A, and if you see other good questions out there, upvote them. That's a great feature. Otherwise, also participate in the chat, and we'll be selecting a winner from the participants. So with that, we'll move on to the audience profile. Brandy?
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So I'm going to actually post this beautiful link in the chat to make it easier for you to get. And I'm going to steal your screen Patrick, the screen sharing. So you can either use the link in the chat, or you can point your camera on your phone at the QR code, and a little link should pop up, and then you could click that and open a web browser. So I'm going to give people a few minutes to join or get connected to the poll, and then the poll isn't open. Yes, okay, thank you. I have to still start the poll at some point, so it will open up in just a second once I've given people a few minutes to join, or not minutes, just a few seconds. But I did get a kick out of Crystal's question: is the giveaway candy corn? It brought a smile to my face, so thanks for that. Okay, so click that link in the chat, the camera, QR code, whatever. If you want to type this in, it is case sensitive, but let's get going with this poll. So I think we've got 7 questions queued up here. And what you should see now on your screen is the first question. So what is your connection to the state of Wisconsin? We've got born and raised, you either live and or work here. Maybe you attended school here. You're just maybe a big fan of the Packers or the Bucks or cheese or beer, whatever it is, something else. And if it's something else, I'd love to know what it is. Or maybe you don't really have any connection to the state of Wisconsin. You just are really excited about hearing from our speakers today.
And it's good to see we've got a couple people with no connection to Wisconsin.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Let's move on to question 2. So, which new Tableau features are you most excited about? And you can choose multiple ones here. This is just a small subset of options, but these are the ones that kind of stood out the most to me. Now, I will say, unless you've maybe done your research, you might not know what some of these are, which is totally fine too. Maybe just go based on the descriptions.
Of Tammy's idea, we should have included a option for Wisconsin Tug.
Yeah. Right? That is your connection.
That works.
Yeah, so we've got lots of different features coming in the latest version of Tableau. You know, they kind of do, now that the Tableau ecosystem really has like expanded, right? It's no longer just Tableau Desktop and Tableau Server. We've got Tableau Prep and Tableau Catalog and, you know, server administration stuff and Tableau Mobile. There's just all sorts of additional, you know, products in that Tableau suite. You got CRM analytics, like the number of features that come out these days really span all of the product line, which is really good to see. But if you're only kind of like used to working with Tableau Desktop, some of these other things might not be as impactful to you. But regardless, really cool to see that we've got people really interested in copying dimensions as a measure, some table extensions and ask data recommendations. So really cool. Thank you for answering that question. Let's move on. In what ways do you use calculated fields? So hopefully you're not just surprised to learn that today's topic is all about calculations in Tableau. So we're curious what ways you tend to use them.
All over the board.
Yeah. I do all the things except for execute external scripts, which I threw that one in there because I feel like it's one of those lesser known things, but kind of cool. Awesome. Yeah, aggregating data, it's fundamental to a lot of what Tableau does. So that's no surprise. Filtering, grouping, calculating, yeah, date manipulation, 100%. So really cool, really cool. I'm moving along just because I want to make sure we stay on schedule and we have a few more questions to get through. But what is your favorite type of calculation? So thinking about the different categories of calculations. We've got level of detail. We have both kind of custom table calculations, but also just quick table calculations that are really easy to implement. We've got aggregation calculations, but also like row level calculations that don't have any aggregation included. So would love to know how you're leveraging calculations. So it's good to see we've got a mix, and I see, level of detail and custom table calcs are a little bit lower on the list. Maybe after today, you'll learn to love them more, or maybe they'll become your new favorite because we've got some presentations on those.
No embarrassment, Tammy. That's what we're here. We're here to learn more about LODs and all the calculations.
Exactly. Like we actually, I think in one of our other meetings, we had a conversation about this and we surveyed people, and level of detail is a big old question mark. So we're going to dive into that. Okay. Few more questions here. So I'm sorry, Adam, I'm already running behind, but I'm curious, what topics would you like us to cover next year? So you can select multiple, but I'm a big fan of kind of, doing advanced planning if I can. So I'm curious what you are most interested in. And of course, if you put other, you should use the chat to tell me what you're talking about, what you want us to do.
Pretty social group. Networking happy hours is doing well.
I mean, it is Wisconsin. Wendy, the next time you're in town, you should let us know and we'll get the group together. I don't know if you ever come to town, but I think I saw, your message about your relationship to Wisconsin. So it would be great to meet you in person. Cool, dashboard actions. I'm a big fan of those. So and then we maybe can peel back the cover on some of those new Tableau features. So thank you for answering. This is really helpful as we think about next year. Are you engaged in the Salesforce ecosystem, like beyond the Tableau user group community? Do you maybe have some other Salesforce products? That's MuleSoft, Salesforce, obviously, Slack, are all part of the Salesforce ecosystem now. Just curious what your relationship is. So,
I think I'll come back next year now. I'm kidding.
Just a small number, say yes, but Adam's gonna give us a little bit of insight into Dreamforce and what the broader Salesforce ecosystem and community looks like. So stay tuned for that in just a moment. But
A lot of Tableau purists.
Yeah, right. For sure. On to our last question. It's really the most important one. How intense are your Halloween decorations? Do you not do it? Do you do it up big? Somewhere in the middle? Extremely.
Oh my gosh, I've got some neighbors that are pretty extreme. I just screw in orange light bulbs in my garage exterior lights, but one of my neighbors has a skeleton from Home Depot that's got to be like 15 feet tall.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, it's really cool. I don't have anything too crazy. I just have some silhouettes in my windows. So, excellent. Well, thank you all so much for taking our poll and providing us some insight and guidance into what we should be thinking about for next year. If you do ever have ideas of something that you are maybe struggling with, I really think that most people, we all struggle with the same thing. So if you're struggling with it, other people probably are too. Let us know and we'll try to craft some, we'll pull together speakers to address those questions. So thank you again for taking our poll. This was really helpful. Patrick, I'm going to turn it back over to you to introduce our next speaker.
Yeah, thanks, Brandy. So we are super pleased to have Adam Mico join us. So Adam used to rub elbows with us in the Madison Tug. So that's his tie to Wisconsin, but he's moved on to global Tableau DataFam fame and most recently was the first DataFam member to be awarded the Golden Hoodie. Tell us more about that, Adam.
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction, Patrick. So I'm going to be talking about a little bit of Dreamforce recap. So first Dreamforce I went to in 2022, walked away shockingly with a golden hoodie. Nobody knows what that means, but it was a fun experience. And recently I moved from Wisconsin to Boston, Massachusetts, as I work for Moderna and need to relocate for the job. So I'm the technical lead of our data visualization and enablement there. So a little bit more about me. Let me pop open the next slide. So as of this year, I'm a Tableau visionary. I'm a 3-time Tableau ambassador. So I am part of the Data Leadership Collaborative, which is a tool agnostic, yet sponsored by Salesforce advisory board. As mentioned before, the Golden Hoodie recipient at Dreamforce, 3-time visit a day, 2 with my former company at Curis, and I was the global, which is a global data consultancy, and I was a Tableau evangelist before I started working with Moderna. So a little bit personal about me is that I'm a husband, father, grandfather, and dog father. My granddaughter and son both live in Wisconsin still, so I'll be visiting back there in December. I love to travel. I travel quite a bit, and I'm a bit of a foodie. And I lived in Wisconsin over 40 years, just moved out to Boston in April, and I'm autistic. Oh, let me jump back. So a bit about the Salesforce recap, and what you need to understand is that they're focusing on integration more than they are on desktop. So if you're going to Dreamforce and expecting a lot of enhancements and discussion about desktop items, you won't get it there, but you'll learn a little bit more about how the product fits in with the platform. So basically, they're talking about enhanced analytics experience, product integration, and AI. Those words are super scary, but fortunately, they offer a no-code solution. And that's kind of like my biggest takeaway from that is that they're focusing on a lot and enhancing and modernizing the analytics stack of Tableau by incorporating these items. So one of the big announcements there, and you probably have seen it with a little bit of Tableau Sparkle, is the Tableau Genie. So the Tableau Genie can utilize your databases and lakes like any Salesforce Cloud, Amazon S3, and others, and sync them in real time, which is really cool if you're working with data. And it could be connected as a database from Salesforce into Tableau Desktop. So it's really the first real-time CRM, and it can be leveraged into Tableau with Tableau accelerators. You could go through the documentation and look at the keynotes to see a little bit more about that. But it is pretty exciting if you're working with Salesforce products or need something more real time. Another cool feature is Slack integration. So Slack integration with CRM analytics with data-driven notifications. So you can kind of work with the notifications and work with workflows embedded and act on them right away in Slack. Right now it's from CRM, but you will be utilizing them a little bit more in Tableau because they'll probably be introduced to the cloud in 2023. So one of the things I would advise anybody who wants to learn a little bit more about the Salesforce ecosystem and how that's going to integrate with Tableau is to learn about Tableau, or what used to be called Tableau CRM, CRM analytics for free on Trailhead. So before, and I was not part of the Salesforce ecosystem before I joined Curis in 2021, but they really tasked me and said, hey, we want you to learn CRM analytics and become a consultant with CRM analytics and Einstein analytics. So I was like really bummed out about it because I was a Tableau only guy, but I really loved Trailhead because it was completely free and the platform was really good. So it included a lot of hands-on as well as different learning styles. So it wasn't really boring training, and it ran at a good pace. I love Tableau training, but the Trailhead training is just so much superior that it's probably the best platform, e-learning platform I've ever been on. So if you want to learn more about that, just Google build and administer CRM analytics, and you'll be able to find that Trailhead. So part of this kind of led to me being involved with more One Community initiatives. So I been working with Salesforce people, talking with CRM analytics people, as well as Salesforce executives. And I learned a lot about them, and they're really passionate about the community. It's a very similar community as ours, super diverse, super supportive. I mean, if you're a stranger looking into our communities, you wouldn't see any difference between the Tableau community, Salesforce community, or MuleSoft community, or even Slack community. You wouldn't really understand why we don't really communicate with one another. And the thing I learned about that is that the more we communicate, the more resources we end up getting. So sometimes you could utilize more things and more tools working with other people and kind of reaching across the aisle. So recently I started up a one community, a Remo Hangout, which is kind of like a virtual cafe. So we could actually talk to each other and meet with each other and realize how similar we are, and kind of network with people that are across platforms. So you may want to learn more about Salesforce. Maybe your job is asking you to do something with Salesforce. It's great to reach out to somebody that's a leader in that field. So basically, the more we reach out, the less that divide becomes, and we can understand a little bit more about the products and a little bit about our communities. So I know we're stretched on time, but do we have any questions? Okay, so you could find me on Linktree, and I'm publishing a book early next year that's focusing on Tableau Desktop Specialist certification. So Tableau Desktop certification is a new version of it. It's all knowledge-based. You can't use Tableau, you can't search the internet. So this is kind of your guide intended to help you with that. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thanks, Adam. There were some requests in the chat for you to put the hood up. There we go. Looks great. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I will share my screen here again. And let Brandy introduce our calculation speakers.
Awesome. Thank you. And Adam, thank you so much. That was really cool. If anybody has any questions for Adam or any of our speakers today, make sure to post those in the Q&A panel. That's different from the chat. It makes it easier to address the questions, whereas the chat can be more for like commentary. But we're going to be using the Q&A panel to pick out a winner for our giveaway, which is not candy corn crystal. But today's theme, or the next hour, we're going to spend talking and diving into calculations within Tableau. So we have 4 different speakers today. They're each going to focus on a different area or a different component of calculations. So Bo is going to speak first, then Luke, then Jen, then Rob. And Bo is going to be talking about kind of the foundations of calculations, how Tableau, like at what kind of level of detail those are really being calculated. Luke is then going to describe the difference between table calcs and level of detail to really understand maybe when you should use which kind. Jen is then going to give some examples on actual table calculations that she leverages. And then Rob is going to do the same with a fixed level of detail calculation. So we've got kind of a great mix. Again, we highly encourage questions, but we're going to kick things off with Bo. So Bo is a Tableau public ambassador who's been using Tableau since 2012, so 10 years now. He earned his PhD at the University of Wisconsin, worked in urban education before transitioning into the tech world, and he manages an analytics team at Apple in Austin, Texas. He spent 14 years here, actually in Madison, Wisconsin. So he definitely has ties to the state, and his favorite viz topics are sports and pop culture. Take it away, Bo. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom with us.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Brandy. Just going to confirm quickly for people whose microphones are still on. Everyone can see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
All right. Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm really excited to be talking to this group. One of the last I guess one of my last days living in Wisconsin in 2019, I had a chance to present to the Madison Tug in person. And so it's fun to be able to come back and see some of the same old friends. So I'm going to spend just a little bit of time today on the most basic calculations in Tableau. And for those of you who've been, using the software for a while, this is probably going to feel pretty introductory, but I know we have some newbies on the call as well, and I think it's always fun to kind of recap the basic stuff, and a good practice for all of us too who've been using the platform for a while to kind of get back to those foundations a little bit. So quick little background on me. I was actually born in Elkhorn and lived in Lake Geneva until I was 2, then grew up in Whitewater, moved to Madison for college, stuck around for about 14 years, and then ended up where I am currently in Austin, Texas. So
Oh, sorry, your slides aren't advancing, FYI.
oh really? They're advancing on my end. I'm sorry. Weird. Is it still showing the first slide?
That's all
Yeah.
I see.
Okay. Let me I'm gonna go out of presentation mode, hopefully. Is this better?
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Yeah, okay. So so I made just a quick little graph there of my of where I've lived timeline. And yeah, as Brandy said, I've been using Tableau since 2012. So it's been really cool to watch the product evolve over time. I think I started on version 6 or 7. Build community, get connected, and yeah, it's been completely transformative for my career. Without Tableau, in general, and Tableau Public more specifically, I wouldn't have been able to do what I do now. So always grateful to have these opportunities and to chat with groups like this. So we are going to go through a set of basic calculations that, for those of you, again, who've been working in the platform for a long time, you've seen these, but we're going to do a quick refresher because these really are very foundational for all of the more advanced calculations you're going to see today. And as one of these by themselves may be really simple and straightforward, but once you start layering these calculations together, you can do really powerful things. But with that in mind, we're going to stay basic for now. So as a reminder, we are going to walk through the idea of creating calculated fields using our quick little analysis, create calculated field drop-down menu. I know a lot of these can be calculated by kind of dragging a pill and clicking that little arrow and choosing your built-in calculation that way too. But we're gonna walk through the conventional analysis, create calculated field. And I won't read these all out loud, but here's what we're going to walk through today. And to make it a little bit more interesting, the data set we're going to use to walk through this is Game of Thrones episode ratings from IMDb. I know the show is, I guess, a few years old now, so it's maybe not as fresh as it used to be, but I love to work with this as an example data set because I think it shows us kind of a good example of what each of these fields are going to do when we apply those basic calculations to them. So in this little data set, we have 73 rows for the 73 original Game of Thrones episodes and 5 fields, season number, episode title, which you'll notice is a string, and we'll get to that, average rating, and the number of user votes on IMDb. So what we're going to do in the next few minutes is help fill out this grid together. So we're going to apply all of these basic calculations to these 5 fields and see what we get. So starting with average. So within Tableau Desktop here, I've created this average rating calc. And so what I do is I just wrap the average command around my average rating field, as well as all of these other fields in order. And what I end up seeing is a result something like this. So, okay, the average season number for Game of Thrones, obviously this isn't particularly meaningful, but it's just over 4. Average episode number, 5.2. And so on. Episode title. This is a good reminder here. As we go back to this slide, remember episode title was a string. When we take the average of a string, that doesn't do anything. We have an error, a little red exclamation point. The average average rating for a Game of Thrones episode is 8.7, and the average episode had 56,028 user votes. Okay, so fairly straightforward on average. It's exactly what you think it is, with the exception of we cannot apply that to a string. Next basic calculation, count. This one's fun because effectively, we're really just counting the number of rows here. There are times when that's going to play out a little bit differently. These calculations are going to apply based on whatever level of granularity you have applied within the visualization, whatever you're using. So in this case, I didn't drag anything out there. I just ran the calculation. And when we run a count, we are going to get a row number on all of these. You'll notice for episode title, count can be applied to a string. So you can't average a text field, but you can count that text field. Next basic calculation, count distinct. So this is going to be different from count in that you are counting not the total number of values, but the total number of unique values. So when we apply that to our 5 fields here, we see, yep, there are 8 seasons, a maximum of 10 episodes. So we're going to see 10 distinct episode numbers. We have 73 distinct episode titles here. So that matches the same as count because none of those overlap. We have 22 different average ratings. These are rounded to the nearest 10th. So that's definitely an understandable result. And we have 73 distinct vote counts. Could be possible to have fewer than that. I guess we could have some repeats, but when the numbers are this high, that would be pretty weird. Okay, next basic calculation, maximum or max wrapped around our field. So we see here, again, we're going to get the same thing as count distinct for season number and episode number. Right here, we're seeing that there are 8 different season numbers and 10 different episode numbers. Right here, we're seeing that the max season is 8 and the max episode is 10. So same result, but different calculation to get us there. So this one's interesting. We take the maximum of episode title and we get you win or you die. So maximum is a calculation that we can apply to a string. And I will use this one pretty regularly if I just want to see the first or last item alphabetically. If I apply max to a string, it's going to give me the last one alphabetically. Our top episode rating is a 9.9 out of 10, one of the highest on the entire IMDb platform. And also one of the highest on the whole platform is 250,000 votes for the most user rated episode. And if you've watched the show, you probably already know which one that was. So moving over to minimum, again, we can take min and wrap it around, and we're going to get the expected results. Our minimum season number and episode number are 1 for each. Minimum applied to that string field, the episode title, we're going to get the first one alphabetically, which is a golden crown. We're going to get the lowest episode rating, 4.0, and the lowest number of votes, just over 27,000. So moving on to median. For this one, it is, as you would expect, you wrap median around the field, and you're going to get a season number of 4 and episode number of 5. Median is a calculation that does not do anything to a string field. You're not going to get the middle one alphabetically like you might think you would with max and min. You're just going to get an error. The median episode rating is an 8.8. We can compare that against the average, with the median being a little higher. That's often a good hint that we have a really low outlier. Again, if you've watched the show, you might have a guess as to how that happens. And our median votes per episode is just over 35,000. And finally, sum. This is again going to be what you expect. We wrap sum around our field. These season and episode numbers are pretty meaningless in this context. Sum cannot be applied to a string either, so we're going to get an error. The sum of the average rating, we're just adding the rating for each episode. Again, in this context, not particularly meaningful, but in a lot of your contexts, very meaningful. And then we see our first one that's actually meaningful with sum. We have a total of more than 4 million user votes on how good Game of Thrones episodes were. So to bring it all back, as a reminder on calculation granularity, these basic calculations are going to match the granularity you have in your view. So just throwing this out as an example, you know, when I don't have anything dragged into my view, other than just the metrics themselves, these are the numbers I get, you know, a 5.2 here for episode number and so on. Whereas if I take season number and I drag that onto my columns shelf, all of these are then going to be calculated automatically based on what I have dragged into that view. So these are using the same calculated fields. They're going to automatically apply to whatever granularity you have used in your view. And to wrap it up, just for fun, here's a little graphic of those IMDb user ratings by season and episode. So the line is going to show you the average episode rating, and then the size of those red circles is going to show you how many users decided to vote on that episode. So if you've seen the show, you know what happened. If you haven't seen the show, you know, this is I guess a little hint into what it looks like when the final season of a television program goes a little bit off the rails. So I'm gonna check the Q&A here and see if anything came up. Looks like not yet. So I'll pause for a second and see if there's anything else. But otherwise, thanks for the opportunity. Enjoyed walking through some basic calculations today, and excited to see the rest of the presenters build on this.
Hey, thanks, Bo. And you know what? Thanks for pointing out the Q&A issue. There's actually 2 questions, but I think the settings were set up so that in such a way that maybe you couldn't see the questions, but there are 2 out there. The first is the max function the count of characters within a string? So how does that max function work on a string field?
No, what the max function is going to do on a string is it is going to find the last item alphabetically. So it's going to do an alphabetical sort. And actually, I'll go to the minimum slide here to show this. So the minimum of this string, it's pulling a golden crown because a golden crown is first alphabetically. The max is pulling you win or you die because that is last alphabetically. So it's not counting the characters. It's purely going alphabetical.
That's perfect. Thank you. And actually, I posted this in the chat, but one way that I use max is like on dates. So if you have like a time series data set, you put max on the date and it gives you like the latest date in your data set. So before, you know, back in my day, Tableau desktop didn't have that button on a date filter that allowed you to like filter the most recent date. So you had to go get around that by taking the max date in your data set. Anyway.
Thanks, Brandy.
Yeah. The other question that's out there is, how did you get this data? Because they've seen it on Tableau Public, but not sure how you did it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I never remember the URL exactly. So I always just tell people to Google IMDb datasets. The first search result you get when you do that is probably going to take you to a page that explains what's in each of them, and then you can click another link to kind of get to the files directly. But yeah, if you Google IMDb datasets, you're going to get there. One of the weird quirks of these is that they are a .tsv file, which you don't see very often, but Tableau reads them just the same as a CSV. So if you want to bring it directly into Tableau Desktop, you would just use the text file connector and use them that way. But I will warn you, these files are big too, so be prepared. When you get down to kind of season and episode ratings for everything they have on that platform, you get into the gigabytes pretty quickly. But yeah, it's one of my favorite data sets to play around with.
Awesome, thank you. And I think people had commented that they really like the format of this, so I thought it was really well done. Thank you so much for your time. If anybody has additional questions for Bo on these kind of fundamental core calculations and functions, drop them in the chat, or the Q&A panel, and we'll keep an eye on it. But Bo, thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you.
Next, we have Luke, who is a 10-year Tableau performance tuning fanatic. He helps to lead the Twin Cities Tableau user group, and he's the founder of Data Drive. So Data Drive's Analytics Accelerator is a fully managed analytics service. It provides the data team, reporting platform, and ongoing data culture to help organizations gain an unfair advantage with their data, which I absolutely love. I mean, that line like pulls me right in. So I love it. Luke is here to talk to us about table calcs, versus level of detail expressions. Thank you so much for your time today, Luke. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And Bo did a really nice job of actually leading into this presentation. His second to last slide around calculation granularity is going to be important to remember, because so much of what he talked about is what Tableau does by default with the calculations that he was discussing with us. What I have the unique opportunity of doing today is taking us a level further with table and level of detail calcs. I'm kind of viewing my role in all of this as the appetizer that leads into Jen and Rob's presentation, which will be much more in detail than what I will present, but helping people figure out what is the difference between a table and a level of detail calculation within Tableau, which is an important first step. So as mentioned, my name is Luke Comiskey. I have been a longtime Tableau user since 2012. Maybe Bo and I downloaded Tableau at the same time, who knows? I co-founded Twin Cities Tableau user group, very active in the community up here. And also interesting fact is that I am a Wisconsinite, born and raised, about 22-ish years in the area. I am a UW Eau Claire Blue Gold. If anyone knows what a Blue Gold is, it's probably one of the most unique college mascots out there. And because I figured I was going to be alongside a bunch of Wisconsinites presenting, I had to like flex my Wisconsin experiences. So I'm originally from Tomah, Wisconsin. I would call it the truck stop of Wisconsin, because really nothing else exists in that area except for interstates and fast food restaurants. We are known as the gateway to cranberry country. So one of my summer jobs was actually working on a cranberry marsh. If you've ever seen them, you've maybe seen them on an Ocean Spray commercial at some point in your life. And this is actually a picture of somebody dressed in the outfit that I actually wore as my other summer job, which is working as Yogi Bear at Jellystone Park. So if you ever were staying with your family at Warren's, Wisconsin, Jellystone Park, somewhere around that 2007 to 2010 timeframe, you might have hugged me and you never knew that. And the last fun fact about Tomah that I just think is one of the most unique things about it is that it's probably the only place in the world that I know that you can sit in one subway and look at the other subway. That's how much of a condensed truck stop we really are. And I think it's pretty cool. All right, so types of Tableau calculations. So there's 3 different main types that you have to know about within Tableau about setting up calculated fields. What Bo just talked about was rows and aggregate. And then what we're going to be talking about today and get a deeper dive from both Jen and Rob on is table calculations and level of detail calculations. And so in case you need to know anything more about row and aggregate, go back to Bo's presentation. It's really all of those calculations around like, if else statements, data trunk, splitting up strings, and all of those fun like aggregate calculations that Bo walked through. Those are all examples of row and aggregate, and we won't spend really any time talking about those. So first up, we're going to talk about table calculations. The official definition that I give is that they apply additional logic on top of local data that has been already filtered within Tableau to do things like rankings, running totals, and percent of total. If that didn't make any sense to you, the easiest way I can explain it is that it allows Tableau to do math after it already does math on top of the data. So if you think about calculations like percent of total and ranking specifically, Tableau can't actually calculate how somebody is ranked or what their percent of total is unless they know what the total amount actually is. So Tableau has to go query the data, figure out what is like the total population we're talking about, and then I can successfully do things like ranking you or give you a percent of total. Whereas like a calculation like running total, I can't actually give you a running total. We're all going to arrive at the same answer at the end of the running total, but I need to know in which order I need to go through all of your elements to do a running sum or a running total. So why it's important is that because sometimes, like I just mentioned, that there's going to be math that only Tableau is going to be in that unique position to provide for end users, because your data is able to be filtered and it's able to be aggregated before you can do some of these cool things like rankings and percent of total on top of it. If you think about it, your database can't do that behind the scenes because your users are going to be changing their selection and looking at different data. So you can't actually calculate percent of total on the back end. You need to wait for a user to make a decision, and then Tableau is going to run a table calculation to figure out more information about it. And then when you're in Tableau, the biggest indicator that at least I'm aware of that you can look at for table calculations is really the small little triangle icon on the right side of your calculation pills. And I'm sure you'll see some examples of that during the following presentations. So one data set that I'm going to be working with, pretty simple, I think pretty relevant to the audience, something I completely made up, is just a 6-row data set that we'll be working with about just sales of different cheese types. Munster is by far the best, in my opinion. So an example of a table calculation would be percent of total. And so a table calculation, what that would provide is it first of all needs to know what the total amount of cheese sales was in my data set. And then that allows me to write out a calculation. And again, I'm not going to go into like how to build this table calculation because we got presentations for it. But the idea behind a table calculation is that it can calculate what is the percent of total based off the amount of data that actually made it in to my Tableau data set. Tableau by far is doing a lot of the work on calculating a lot of this, the table calculations. And then to like drive that point even further home is that when you have a table calculation, the beauty of it is that when users, say, hey, I'm not interested in looking at cheddar cheese anymore, then a table calculation, because that exists within Tableau, allows it to recalculate the percent of total. And so I can move my numbers from like, what is it percent of total within my entire population? Now I can move it into what happens if I just remove cheddar cheese. And the last thing I'll say that is more of a Tableau 201 concept, but just to help you understand the power behind table calculations and why you'd use them, is table calculations can actually be stacked up. And so not only if like one of your stakeholder questions is like, I want to understand our quarterly cheese performance, but I want to understand the quarterly change of my market share, that requires 2 different calculations to take place. First, I need to understand what is my quarterly market share. And then Tableau also needs to calculate how much did my market share change as a percentage. And so the beautiful part of table calculations, which definitely does not fit into a 10, 15-minute presentation, is that you can actually stack up these table calculations to do some really interesting business analysis based off stakeholder requirements. One thing I'll leave as a reference guide that has actually helped me in just like understanding how to work with table calculations, and I'm sure we'll get into more detail as we go through today's presentations, but it's just that there is a certain way that you can decode how table calculations can be read so that you can understand, because I think a lot of times when people get into making table calculations, it gets really confusing. There's these list of fields, compute using checkboxes, not checkboxes. And this is a really cool visual that has existed from Andy Kriebel for a long time. And it's been very helpful for me in trying to decode how to work with table calculations, because it's not terribly intuitive within the interface, but once you understand it, it gets a lot easier to work with these things. And one little quick shout out before I get into performance is, if you think table calculations are really interesting, I do have a blog post out there you guys can feel free to check out. I can post it in the link here too, but table calculations explained if you really want to go deeper on like how to decipher how to work with different table calculations and to understand that whole compute using concept. One thing I'll say on both table calculations and level of detail calculations is the mention at the beginning that a lot of my work is actually spent in performance tuning for Tableau dashboards. And so a lot of times I go into environments where people are creating table calculations or level of detail calculations that they don't totally kind of appreciate like where they exist and kind of the filtering pattern and where it affects performance. And so one thing I wanted to highlight from a table calculation perspective is that there's a lot of things working behind the scenes where Tableau is trying to filter data and trying to calculate data. And by far, table calculations are one of the last things that get calculated, which makes sense now that you can understand from this presentation that Tableau is doing a lot of the work as kind of that last step. It's doing math on top of math. So if we switch over to level of detail calculations or LOD calculations, the official definition is that it controls the level of granularity that a value is computed at, regardless of the existing aggregation of the visualization. And this is really important because it kind of gets back to Bo's second to last slide about calculation granularity, is that level of detail calcs allow you to break out of that pattern that Tableau by default goes in to work as. So if you don't understand what that means, it's just like it allows you to aggregate at non-Tableau default levels. It allows you to play around with where data is being calculated. Why they're really cool is that they can, that Tableau, if you guys are familiar with like how Excel works, Tableau very much acts like a pivot table on steroids, honestly. Like every time you bring in a new dimension or a field, it's going to bring data down to that level and it's going to calculate at that level. And that's a really powerful thing. That means you can do a lot of interesting calculations across a lot of different sections of data. Level of detail calculations are probably one of the coolest innovations for Tableau to come out with, because it allows you to like escape out of that pattern to be able to make calculations that could maybe aggregate at a different level than what Tableau by default is going to do. And the telltale sign that you are working with level of detail calculations is, one, for sure, curly brackets. If you ever see curly brackets within a calculated field, you're dealing with a level of detail calculation. And then 99% of the time, you'll see words like fixed, include, or exclude at the beginning of it. And that'll also tell you you're working with a level of detail calculation. So some quick examples of level of detail calcs is like if we want to do fixed at the level of quarter for the sum of sales on the cheese data that we're working with. This in English just means that I'm only going to be focused on looking at on a quarterly basis, what are the sum of sales? And so my first 3 rows of my data is going to be calculated for the sum of sales. And then my last 3 rows, because it's a different quarter, are going to be calculated for their sum of sales. So it's a way that in Tableau, I can show sales at the level of cheese, but work my way up to get quarterly sales on the same visualization or table or row. And without LODs, you wouldn't necessarily be able to get that, because Tableau would by default go down to the level of cheese and quarter because it's like a pivot table. And then just another quick example is like I can also exclude something. Like if I exclude quarter and then I want to aggregate it differently to average of sales, you can see now that I can get the average of sales like within cheddar and the average of sales within Swiss. They just happen to be the same average of sales. And then the average sales of Munster. So to put a bow on this is the level of detail syntax is there's really 3 key pieces you need to keep in mind when you're writing out LODs. And I'm sure we'll get into this as we start to work in Tableau with these next presentations. Is there's a scoping keyword like fixed, include, or exclude. There is a spot where you're declaring which dimensions you're going to be working with, what dimensions or data fields need to be considered. And then the last thing to note about level of detail calcs is that everything, the output of it needs to be an aggregation, which means you need to be doing some kind of math on it that gets it to average, sum, min, max. It needs to bring back a kind of single result or an aggregated result and not just individual row levels. I think for the sake of time, but this is a good reference guide if you just need to understand how level of detail can be visualized in the whole grand scheme of when things get calculated. And then my last disclaimer, of course, just because as a performance fanatic and trying to squeeze every bit of performance out of Tableau dashboards, is level of detail calculations can be really powerful for getting answers that you want to get after. But there are things you need to consider when you're setting up your filters, or even from a performance and asking Tableau to calculate things that have to go over. They have to scan over a lot of the data to figure out where to calculate various things. It's just keep in mind that while LODs are very powerful, if you overuse them, they can actually tend to start to slow down your dashboard in certain situations. So just my common disclaimer of like, just your mileage will vary with trying to use these things, and it really depends on how you're setting up your data. And it might just be easier to ask your friendly database administrator to do stuff instead of you trying to pre-format it through an LOD within Tableau. Thanks for the time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Luke. We do have a few questions in the Q&A window,
okay.
But we are at time for your bit. So I'm hoping that maybe you could take a look at those and respond.
Absolutely.
Questions. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Jen. Jen has been into data viz since 2014, applying visualization best practices as well as creativity in both the nonprofit, for-profit, and government sectors. She also has a PhD in social psychology and enjoys helping organizations collect, analyze, understand, and use their data. So she is currently on the leadership team for the Madison Tableau user group and was recently named a Tableau user group ambassador for 2022. So really cool to have Jen here to talk about some table calculations. So over to you, Jen.
Great, thanks, Brandy. Hey, everybody. I recognized a lot of names in the participant list. It's good to see you all back for one of these meetings, hopefully learning a few things about calc. So yes, my goal today is to share with you a couple of calculations that I have used, do use, often use in my work. So I'm currently a contractor. I have two main clients. I work with Pat McCormick in his company. I mostly work there with K through 12 education data. I also have been doing a lot of data literacy training recently. And my other main client is the Department of Children and Families here in Wisconsin, where I mostly look at key performance indicators and those types of metrics, as well as human resources data, and do some Tableau training there. I do not have a fun anecdote prepared, but I think we'll just get into the content, and I'm happy to chat about myself later if anybody has questions. So I have three calculations I want to show you today. First, I'm going to go through in the PowerPoint of how I use them, and then I'll actually show you in Tableau how to achieve that. So one is using the last calculation. If you've got a situation like this, where I have a dashboard, this is just the top part of it, where the client wanted to be able to see the change in these key metrics over time. So for confidentiality reasons, I've pulled off what metric they are. Of course, those are labeled in the real dashboard. But for each of these metrics, they wanted to see what is the percent of change over time from the first date to the last date, and what does that look like as a trend? But then we also let the user decide what is that start date and what is that end date, so they can set those dynamically in the dashboard. And so I need my calculation to be able to be reflective of that, but then also only show them what is that total change, or from the first to last, no matter which 2 years are picked. And so I used the last calculation to help me do that. So I'll show you that one. Actually, let's just do that one first. We'll go back and forth. So here's a very simple table that we'll use to illustrate the point. So here I'm just looking at sum of sales by year. And then if I turn this into a table calculation, just using the basic table calculation interface here, and then I want to set this to compute based on the first one. So you see here, I've got each of my years, I've got my percent change. And if I only want to show this most recent year, if I were to put a filter for year on here, I'll just do it this way. If I were to just say, keep this one, then my entire view of what I'm displaying disappears, because it doesn't have those other data points to reference. So what Luke was just talking about with, it's the math on top of the math. Well, I've taken out half of what it needed to do the equation. So that doesn't work. And yeah, I could hide these other years and then this would still show, but then that gets complicated when a new year of data gets added. Now I'm going to have more years than I want. So this is where the last calculation comes in really, really handy. So the last calculation, actually, let me show you it this way first. So last as a field just is numbering the records that you have, and it assigns the 0 to the bottommost one and then counts backwards from there. So you see, if I just put that calculation by itself, my most recent year here gets the 0, and then it counts from that. So I can leverage that calculation by making a calculation that says, I want the record where last has that value of 0. And this is also a table calculation. So it's going to apply later in the pipeline. And so if I put that as my filter and say true, now my other years disappear out of my view, but I still get that value that I needed to show. And so that's how I use that to be able to calculate between whatever years my users pick, and then still just show the most recent. So little handy trick that I find myself using quite a bit. Okay, next I want to show you a couple of ways that I use the index calculation. So one of them is just to add numbers to a list, whether that's a table or a graph like this. Sometimes it can be really helpful for people to just see what record that is, or I should say what order it is. And you can use index to do that, even if you don't have something like record number in your view, or if the numbering is based on what you've done with the view. And then the second way, I use this one all the time. It helps spread out data points that would otherwise be stacked on top of each other. So here we're looking at the number of students, we'll just say that. And you can see based on the position of these relative to the vertical axis of the count that almost all of these have about the same value. There's a couple that are higher here and there, but if I didn't spread these out, it would look like there were just a couple of data points here. And so index is really awesome to be able to do this. This technique is also known as jittering. So if you want to Google Tableau and Jitter or Data Viz and Jitter, you'll probably see a lot of examples of that. So in Tableau, here is my same bar graph where I've got just a list of people. And this one is just using that top set that's comes with Superstore by default. And then you can adjust the number of members of that set using the parameters. We'll just bump that up to 10. And so if I just want to number these for my users, they can easily see who is number 6 without themselves having to count down the bars, which you can imagine get even more challenging if you've got more of them. I can either just start typing up in here or create a new calculation like Bo did and just say index. And it's going to make this continuous by default. But if I change that to be discrete, you can see it's already working. And then I can just move that to the left-hand side. And it is computing this just using table down, which is what I would want anyway. I could switch this to be customer name and I get the same result because the customers are already in order here. And then I could just do a little cleanup if I wanted, format it how I like. And that easily, I now just have a numbered table or chart or whatever that can make it a lot easier for your users. So that's a simple one. The other one, the jittering technique that I was mentioning. So here I have just a basic viz where I'm looking at these 3 different categories of furniture, office supplies, and technology, and I'm looking at sum of sales. And then my level of detail here is at the manufacturer level. And there are a lot more data points. You can't see the number, it's blocked on my screen. Well, anyway, there are a lot of data points that, just like in my real example, that stack on top of each other. And so it makes it really hard to see what's going on down here. You can see the outliers, or at least some of them, but you can't really see what's happening here. So I will, instead of doing it in the as a pill, I'll just show you the real calculation. So I just have that same index with the brackets. And then if I just bring that out and I want to put it opposite of my other measure. So I'm trying to jitter my sales data points. I'm going to put it up here and it looks like not too much has happened yet. And that's because I need to tell it what I want it to index on. I want it to basically recompute for every manufacturer because that is my level of detail. And when I do that, boom, Tableau splits those dots apart. And now it can become a lot easier to see all the variations, even though they generally have about the same value. It doesn't necessarily work perfectly. There are still some that might be on top of each other, but it certainly gives you a better idea of where these data points are. One caution about this method, so this works really well if there is not already a relationship between the field, my detailed field, in this case manufacturer, and my measure. But you can imagine something like a situation where if I wanted to show how long employees had been with our company, and my level of detail was employee ID or something like that for each of my points, while the IDs are probably assigned sequentially, meaning that people who've been here longer probably have a lower ID than people who've been here less time. So there's already a relationship between those two. In a situation like that, this method may not work so well for you. So just want to give you that caution. But in most cases like this, I find it works really well to just give you a better idea of the data. I've used this in box and whisker plots. So you can, instead of just having the straight line of data points underneath that box and whisker, you can spread them out underneath it. I know Steve Wexler has talked a lot about this and a lot of others in the community. I just think it's a really great technique and pretty easy to implement. And third example I wanted to give you is using the rank unique function so that I can only show the top and bottom most values in the same view. So I don't have to have a separate graph that shows the top and a separate graph that shows the bottom. If I don't care about the middle, I can use this calculation to just take those out, but still preserve the actual value of these records. So this is an example from one of my views. This is actually a tooltip, a Vision tooltip, where users can hover and then see which courses are contributing the most to the change that they're seeing. And so I'm just showing the top and bottom 4 in this case, but that could be any number that you want. So in Tableau here, what I did is I just have the profit ratio measure that's already built in. And then I'm going to look at this by manufacturer. And then I just put profit ratio on color and picked a kind of standard financial color legend. So we've got the reds and the blacks, and I've already sorted this, but let me just clear that out. So if I just pull manufacturer in by default, it's going to give them an alphabetical order, which is kind of all over the place. So what I like to do is just sort that by my profit ratio field. And I want to show the best ones first. That's how I did the sorting. And then this rank. So I can either, I'll make a calculation. So we'll do sort. So the rank of my profit ratio. And I want my rank in ascending order to be less than my parameter here. So you could either hard code it. So if you just wanted to give them 10 top and bottom 4 or 10 or whatever, you could do that. Or if you already have a parameter like I do that lets them set the number, you can put that in here too. So I want the rank that's less than that number they picked. And I also, whoops, sorry, or I need that rank, goodness gracious. Typing, Tableau, what are you doing? I don't know where it came up with that one. All right, fine, same line. Or rank of my profit ratio, this time in descending order, to be less than my parameter. So there's my calculation, but before I show you that, let's first just see what happens when I just see what is the ranking. And again, it's going to want to make it continuous. If I switch that to discrete, so I've already ordered these, but if I clear that order out, now the numbers look all over the place because these are not sorted in order, but the rank is being sorted in order. So here's 3, and you can see that's a really long gray bar. So if I then sort these back in order, probably should have just hit undo, whatever. Profit ratio. Okay. Then I get my ranks. So that's what Tableau is doing, is just assigning that number based on the value of the measure. So then when I bring my calculation out, whoops, that's not what I meant to do, sorry. And say true, that's where it only returns the ones that are ranked from the top of the list and the ones that are ranked from the bottom of the list. So sort of like the last calculation starts at the bottom and counts upward, a descending rank kind of does that same thing. So I think this is actually the calculation I had pre-made, but it's the same thing I was just showing you. And then I often will use rank unique here instead of rank, just depending on if you've got a lot of same values. If you don't have a lot of same values in your data, then it doesn't much matter. What rank unique will do is basically pick the first one and only show you that one. So depending on your use case of whether you want ties to show or not, we don't have time to get into that here. There's all different flavors of rank, and they all deal with how you want Tableau to handle ties. Rank unique will force so that only one member of the tie is shown. Rank will include all of them, and so on. You can read up on the various ranks, but I often use rank unique, but you could do it as rank too. So that's how that works, is that I told it to just give me the ranks sorted one way, less than my parameter, rank sorted the opposite way, and put those together. And then I just get the very top of my distribution and the very bottom of it, which makes it really nice for a view like this, where I just want to show them the extremes and we're not too concerned about what's going on in the middle. So there you go, 3 examples of some table calcs in this case that I use in my work, have used, and can really add some good functionality to your data visualizations.
Awesome, Jen. Thank you so much. And you are right on schedule. I appreciate everybody being so succinct and keeping us on time. That was absolutely wonderful. I will say there are some questions for you, though, if you wouldn't mind popping over to the Q&A panel and answering some of those. Thank you all for those who are posting questions in that Q&A panel. Thank you so much. Again, I think, just before Rob kicks us off with this final speaker, just a reminder that we are picking winners, or a winner, a single winner. From those who ask questions, we're picking a winner of some Tableau swag. So this is your last chance to get in those questions. But let's turn it over to Rob. So Rob is he likes to be called Dr. Rob. He also has a PhD. I think I didn't realize this, but three of our 5 presenters today have PhDs. So I just felt like that was very impressive. Anyway, Dr. Rob's career is in the data or in the dairy industry, and he's focused on the transformation of data into information, knowledge, and ultimately wisdom to facilitate better business decisions. Sorry. Following a career in production agriculture, Rob worked at the Grande Cheese Company for the past 29 years, where he's currently the senior principal data scientist. So the addition of Tableau to his toolbox 7 years ago has enhanced his ability to communicate with data and visualizations. However, an even more important resource has been the Tableau community. Can we get a collective "Aw"? That's so sweet. Thanks, Rob. But without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rob, who's going to be talking about a fixed level of detail expression today. Take it away.
Thanks, Brandy, and good afternoon, everyone. It feels like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. There's just been some great presentations today that really lead in well. Especially thank you to Luke for showing some of the things that I'm going to hold up as visual aids. You have them on slides, which makes them a whole lot easier to read. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about myself other than, as I've seen, we seem to have a connection to the Lake Geneva and Walworth County area. I grew up on the other end of Geneva Lake in Walworth. So there are more of us from down there than anyone could have ever imagined. Today, I really want to talk about how do we answer questions involving multiple or different levels of granularity in a single visualization. And as a background, what is level of granularity and why do I care? And then, get out a PowerPoint and actually look at some things. So I almost done with the PowerPoint here. If you Google level of detail and Tableau, you'll get the chart that's on the left and really talks about dimensionality and how as we move, for example, from the top left over here, which would be, say, a furniture category. Within furniture category, there are multiple subcategories. Bookcases is one example. This is superstore data. There could be tables or chairs or desks. Another dimension, as we move down the line, could be manufacturing. We see a bunch of different manufacturers who manufacture bookcases. And this type of dimensional hierarchy really comes in two flavors. One of them that's very tree-based, where you might have something like the geography of North America. Within North America, the 3 largest countries, the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Within those countries, the United States and Mexico have states. Canada has provinces and territories, and there's really no overlap. You're either in the state of Wisconsin or you're not. And within those states, we have counties or parishes, and we can move on down the hierarchy like that. A hierarchy as it's within Superstore is a little bit different because within furniture, we have a bunch of subcategories which only exist in furniture, but manufacturers might be somewhere else. A manufacturer might make bookcases. They might also make printers. Hitachi makes heavy equipment. They make electronics. They make all sorts of different things. So they're companies that the same manufacturer might span across different dimensions within the dimension they're in. And that can create some oddities as you're looking at data. And what you need to do really depends on your data. Only you as a user really know that data. So the question I wanted to answer today is, as we look at Superstore data, we have some different subcategories in furniture. And we see there are 868 bookcases in our inventory, which come from different manufacturers. Again, the same 868 here, out of about 8,000 total pieces of furniture. And I want to ask, what proportion of furniture are bookcases, chairs, furnishings, and tables? And we look at 868, and that's a little more than 10%. It had to be 8,600 here to be 10%. We've got about a third of them here, almost half there, and about 15% there. So if we transition to Tableau, and I just open up a brand new session of Tableau, I'll grab sample Superstore and build what we were just looking at. I just looked at product by category, subcategory, and I grabbed the quantity here. So there's the number of items in each category. And I'm going to add some quick totals to this. Column grand totals. And I'm not sure how to get rid of the stuff that's over here. And under category, I'm going to add a category subtotal here. And one thing you can do at Tableau, if you like it, you can format just about anything to look where you want to. So if you want this to be a category subtotal instead of just a total, you can change that, and Tableau will change the text for you, and this will carry throughout, this piece of canvas. One of the questions we asked, what proportion is this 868 of the 8,000? Coming from an Excel background, as most of us do, I said, well, that's pretty easy to calculate out. Let me get to my notes here so I actually do what I think I'm going to be talking about. And so I'm going to take category, and what I really want to do is quantity divided by the sum of quantity. I'm going to take, this is my quantity, and I have a sum of quantity here. And someone asked earlier, if you hold down the control key and scroll your mouse, you can make text larger or smaller, which is kind of handy when you're displaying things. And Tableau is telling me there's an error, and the error it's telling me is it can't mix aggregate and non-aggregate data. The quantity is from one row. Sum of quantity is trying to add up a bunch of rows, and Tableau is saying, hey, that's a no-no. I don't know how to calculate that, because at the time it displays each of these, it doesn't know this total yet. And that goes back to what Luke was talking about earlier, order of operations. Google Tableau order of operations. Print one of these things, keep it in your desk. They're really handy as you try to troubleshoot what's going on. And I looked at this and thought, the next thing I thought, well, if I was in Excel, I'd just sum if and use something from here that, well, if the category equals furniture, then okay, Tableau doesn't like that either. It doesn't know what a sum if is. But there's got to be another way to do it. And this is back to what was talked about just a little while ago. It's a level of detail. What I want to do is tell Tableau that within each different category, I want to calculate a sum. And to do that, I create a calculated field. Put my next thing, so I'm calling the same thing I'm used to. Quantity. And I'm going to start typing fixed. Tableau fills it in. It's a fixed level of detail, which means I want to do this at each different level within a dimension. And as Luke mentioned earlier, I need an aggregate function here. Some quantity. And then I need to close this down. So as was mentioned earlier, the first thing we have is a scoping keyword, and this could be fixed, it could be include, it could be exclude. There are a few others you can use within Tableau Prep, which are really handy. We're going to concentrate on fixed today, so I'm saying at a level, and I'm going to say fixed category. So at the level of category, or for each category, I want to sum quantity. And if I just say okay to this, drag this on top here, I will now see. Let's change the order here. So I now have the same numbers I saw before, and my total for the category, which you'll notice is the same number in each row. And luckily, as it should, it matches the category total. Same thing happens here with office supplies. I have 29,000 total, and I have the 22,000 here. I now have both of these measures at the same level of granularity. And because they're at the same level of granularity, I can do math on them. I can use them in a calculation. So if I create another calculated field called proportion, I can say it's quantity divided by category quantity. So I'm taking my quantity, dividing by my category quantity to get a proportion. One of the things that I like to do in Tableau is anytime I define something that I know is going to have a specific number format, in this case, a percentage, I'm going to tell it ahead of time so I don't have to reformat it every time I use it. Drag that in here, and now I see what I'm expecting, about 11%, about a third, less than half, a little over 10%, 15%. My totals are all looking correct. So I'm getting the math I want done. And one of the things that you've noticed, before when I tried to create that first calculation where I tried to use quantity and sum of quantity together, Tableau came back and said, you can't mix aggregate and non-aggregate data. So logical question is, well, this is non-aggregate. I know this is a sum, so a sum is an aggregation. Again, back to the Tableau order of operations, very early in this order of operations, we're calculating fixed level of detail. So by the time it's pulled onto the canvas, this is not an aggregated column. Tableau treats this as a non-aggregated column, which is I can do math on it as though it's non-aggregated. And this is really handy. Every once in a while, you'll get an error from Tableau telling you can't mix things. You can't use a level of detail inside a table calculation. Actually, you can. You can't use a table calculation inside a level of detail. You get that in the right order because of the order they're calculated by Tableau. So we should be able to do this same type of thing now if I want to add in manufacturer. And as I look at manufacturer, exactly what I expect here, these numbers are all staying the same. And now I'd like to know, what's my fixed level of detail by manufacturer? And probably the easiest way to do that is just to duplicate something I've already calculated, edit it. And I'm going to say this is manufacturer. And I'm going to grab manufacturer and put that in there instead of category. Everything looks like it should. I'm getting no errors. So I'm going to drag this in. We can get rid of this one. Manufacturer. I'll get rid of that. And we start to look at things and saying, well, yeah, it's almost what I like, but not quite. I'm seeing 91 and 31, and now suddenly I'm seeing different numbers. Well, why am I seeing different numbers? And again, it has to do with how I'm telling it to calculate. And your first thought may be, well, it's really because we have manufacturer. So let's just get rid of manufacturer, leave category and subcategory. Where's our category of quantity? So we're still seeing different numbers. And again, it comes back to the order of operations. What's happening here is Tableau is calculating this number early on. And I'm thinking, well, maybe it's that a manufacturer has bookcases and appliances, or maybe some accessories or copiers down here. So what if I just filter? I can tell it, keep only furniture. So now it's going to have only furniture. And my numbers still are not the same here. And the reason that they're still not the same comes back to order of operations again, is because Tableau is calculating this number before it filters on the quick filter shelf for category. And I know there's a question in the chat about moving a filter to context. So if I click on this and I think, add this filter to context, what this is telling Tableau to do is to calculate that before it calculates this. And now my numbers still aren't lining up exactly like I like them to. Add manufacturer back in here and say, okay, what is the real difference? Get rid of subcategories so it's clear, get rid of these other numbers so it's clear. And now I'm seeing numbers that are coming out the same. The other thing is, if I really want subcategory to be here, I'm going to have to go back into my table calculation, level of detail calculation for manufacturer, and tell it that I want to do this not by manufacturer, but I want to do it by category. Subcategory and manufacturer. So what this is telling Tableau is within a category and a subcategory and a manufacturer, calculate this quantity. And now I'm seeing that my numbers all magically line up because I'm calculating at the same level of granularity, same level of detail that I'm displaying. And I know one of the questions that's going to pop up here as we get in the last few seconds here is, I calculated a percent of the whatever it was, a percent of each subcategory that was part of the main category. That's the proportion here. Why didn't I just use a table calc? A table calc is really easy. I could just click on this. I could, on the pill, I could change my quantity into 8% of total. And either one will work. The real answer is, where do you want to use this calculation later? And if it's something you want to use later in the process, you may want a table calc, you may want a level of detail. And the real solution to determining and understanding how does that work and which do I use where is the same answer that musicians give when somebody asks you, well, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And the answer is practice. It's really just a matter of starting to work with your data and try different things. And one of the things that I do anytime I'm going to build a visualization is I start by building a table. I build up my calculations, put them all in a table so I can see the numbers and check the numbers and say, hey, am I calculating correctly? Once I'm calculating correctly, it's time to start making charts and graphs and add interactivity. I've tried it the other way, and I can create some really great charts. And as people start to test that during user acceptance tests, they come back and say, yeah, the chart looks great, but the numbers aren't right. So I really need to get the numbers right first. And I see we're kind of at the edge of time, so I'm going to turn things back over to Randy and Patrick.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rob. You do have 4 questions for you in the Q&A panel. So if you wouldn't mind taking a look at those, we'd appreciate it. And thank you everyone for asking such great questions and keeping the chat lively. It's always really awesome to hear. I mean, personally, I think that's what the Tableau user groups really are about. It's about creating that community. We all, I think, have similar experiences, deal with some similar problems. So it's really nice to hear that other people, are with us in that same boat. But Patrick, I'll turn it over to you because I know you have some things you want to talk about.
Yeah, so I'll just echo what Brandy said. Thanks to our rock star lineup of speakers and all of the engagement today. That's fabulous. So upcoming events. So our mode of operations with our 3 Wisconsin-based tugs, Milwaukee, Madison, and this virtual Wisconsin tug, is to provide an event each month. So next up in November is the Milwaukee tug on November 17th, and their topic is going to be parameters, kind of similar to what we did today with calculations. And Brandy's recruiting speakers. So here's your opportunity to shine with your knowledge of parameters. Anything you want to add about that, Brandy?
No, I think you hit it on the nail on the head. I will be dropping some links in the chat in just a moment to our different events so you can register. But yeah, calculations and parameters go together like peanut butter and jelly. So if you want to know more about parameters, definitely come. But we love hearing from real use cases that people are experiencing. So join us.
Awesome. Then in December, on December 9th, we've got a Madison tug event. And right now we're planning on that to be online as well. And the topic there is going to be ways to bring data together in Tableau. So blends, joins, and more. So love to have you join us for that. No pun intended. And then next up will be our next Wisconsin tug on January 27th. And the topic is TBD. So we got some feedback from you today in the poll about things you'd like to hear about. But if there's anything more specific, please reach out either to Brandy or myself. And then we've got a drum roll for our swag winner of the day.
Yes,
Brandy?
absolutely. We need audio or something here. But the winner today from those who asked questions is Sarah Carr. Congratulations, Sarah. Thank you everyone for asking such wonderful questions. Congratulations to Sarah. Sarah, if you wouldn't mind sending me your email address, I'll reach out and get the necessary information.
Awesome. Congrats, Sarah. And lastly, these are ways that you can connect with us. I dropped the link in the chat to join our Wisconsin Tug Slack workspace. That's missing from this slide deck, but please join us there and join the conversation. All the speakers are, I think all the speakers are out there, so you can ping them, but it's great to have the conversation out and open in the channels so others can learn from it as well. But yeah, we've got a LinkedIn presence, our user group presence on tableau.com, as well as Twitter or email. So love to hear from you. And thanks again for joining us today, and happy Halloween.
Yeah, and I just once again, I want to just say thank you, Patrick, thank you to you for hosting such wonderful meetings and facilitating this community. But again, for all of the speakers, I mean, we had 5 phenomenal people come to speak to us today, each sharing just a glimpse into their some of the work that they do. So we can't do this without our wonderful presenters. So thank you all, and thanks for everyone who attended.